Hello, I'm Mandolin Graham, member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and licensed trauma therapist. I would like to share a quick note with you before you watch the following video. Maternal infant mortality and morbidity rates among Black mothers and babies are incredibly disproportionate. However, these rates are more than just numbers. I invite you to listen to the stories of mothers who have experienced complications during and following pregnancy, such as spontaneous coronary dissection, hemorrhage, and loss of their infants. They will discuss not only these events, but also how the trauma of these tragedies impacted their mental health, as well as special notes they like to provide to other mothers and providers working with Black mothers. Thank you for taking the time to listen to their stories.
I don't have fertility issues. I don't have any of those sort of things, but I do have a clotting issue, which I believe could have played a part in the unfavorable birth outcome I had. So in 2015, got pregnant, made it 24 weeks. And one day I felt like there was increased fetal movement. And I was like, well, is baby growing or is this normal? And I had a cousin who was pregnant at the time. We were both due, I think she was due in December and I was due like at the beginning of January.
Yeah.
And I called her and I was like, hey, I just noticed the baby's moving a lot today. Do you think that's normal? Because she had other children. And she was like, well, it depends. And we were talking. I said, well, if I still feel this way in the morning, I'm going to call my OB. And I remember it was probably, I don't even know what time of night it was, but I went to use the bathroom. And when I went to use the bathroom, it was just blood. So my husband, we rushed to the hospital and they sent the nurse in, and then the nurse went and got the resident, and then the resident got the OB, the attending. And I was like, okay. Like I've seen this machine enough and I've heard heartbeats enough to know that something isn't right. So when the OB came in, he was looking at the nurse and the resident who I guess did not want to tell me or deliver any kind of news. He was like, okay, I see why you called me. So he told me that I had placenta abruption and that there was nothing that I really could have done. Is something that they just cannot foresee. So at that point, we had to just kind of go through the motions to still deliver the baby stillborn. So that was in September 2015. And that was pretty much how that went. So after I had the baby, they did let me hold the baby and they didn't rush me. But that pretty much is what happened. Oh, yes. So I think that grieving is good. I don't think there is a rule. I think you should allow yourself to go through the grieving process with emphasis on the fact that it is a process. Because there were days I'm like, I'm good today or I'm good right now. And then later I could say, oh, I had a moment. But I'm also a proponent of like a good, ugly cry. Like sometimes you just need a good, ugly cry, and that's okay. I think we wear so many hats and so many roles thinking that we have to show it this way and we have to be all these things. But really, to be the best for anybody else, you have to be your best self. So it's okay to cry if it is 12 o'clock in the afternoon and you saw an ice cream commercial and it had a baby. Like, I don't know, but it's okay to cry if that's what the grief calls for. If that's what the process calls for, then that's what the process calls for, and that's okay. And then some of the other like little mommy groups and things where other women have experienced that, I think that helps because it just takes you out of this isolated situation versus I'm among a whole group of women that have experienced this, and now look at them, they're thriving, they're healthy. Some have had babies, some have not, but they're in a place where they are, you know, like back to themselves or they're, you know, just in a good environment. So I would say go through the grieving process, but really be good to yourself because if you're not, then you really cannot be all that you endeavor to be for other people.
Okay.
But I think because I was so, like, I was pregnant right after, it was just kind of like, I almost felt like I was not reliving the same thing, but the dates, it wasn't like I had it was the same season, the same time of year, the same sort of. So I think that, but I had to make a decision like, no, this baby's healthy, this baby's going to be fine.
But are there other resources that you wish were more readily available to you, or in general?
So I think if there was some information, yes, this is what you experienced, but also the impact of what that might mean for your emotional health or just your overall well-being. What are some resources? If you feel like you don't want to eat, here's a number to call or something like that. Maybe if there was, and again, the healthcare system doesn't necessarily lend itself to this all the time, but if there was some sort of handoff, like, well, we just want to check in at the 1 month or the 3 month or some type of warm transfer.
Do you have messages for those who are providing maternal, postnatal, and infant care to African American families?
I would say to know your patient. I think patients can say a lot of things, but other things are telltale. So like if body language or word choice or just something. I had one doctor who's like, yeah, patients will say they don't feel this or they don't feel that. He was like, but the eyes never lie. He's like, the eyes never lie. So I can say, hey, does that hurt? And they're like, well, no, not really. He's just like, no, the eyes never lie. So I think if you can pay attention to just the other nuances or the communication nuances, the things that aren't being said, could be blaring. If you can offer a comprehensive approach, then that's fine. The way healthcare is, it's so siloed and fragmented. Like you might be here just for OB, you might be here just for pediatrics, you might be here just for, in my case, hematology. I think if that can be done, then that kind of shows more of a whole approach. If there is research, sometimes we're not as inclined to be a part of research studies, so it limits what works for us or what nuances and cultural impacts and influences, need to be addressed so that we can have these favorable outcomes. But if there is something, don't be so anti to not share the information, especially if you feel like it is okay. Granted, if you're uncomfortable, I wouldn't do it, but I would definitely say ask questions, do your research, and if you don't feel like you are getting the care that you need, you can go somewhere else and get the care that you need.
If you or a loved one has had a similar traumatic experience to those shared by the mothers in these videos, please consider their advice and seek resources such as support groups or grief therapy. It could make a world of difference. Again, thank you for listening to them share their story.